All right, folks, thanks for joining us today. This is a webinar we're doing about the new offering for Office 365 around voice and telephony and making phone calls using Teams. Today we've got Brian Miller from FusionTek. They're in the Seattle, Washington area. And I'm Doug Miller. I'm with Edge Technology, and we're in South Texas. And Brian is an expert in this area of implementing Teams voice and telephony using 365 Teams for his clients. He's seen this as a big piece for folks as they've gotten ready to work from home. And we want to talk to him about that, get some questions answered. I have some questions about it that I want to hear the answers to. And Brian, thanks for being on with us today.
Well, thanks, Doug. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit more about Teams Voice. It's an area we've certainly got a lot of knowledge in. Our team's working on deploying for a while now. How are you guys handling the COVID situation down in Texas?
You know what? It's changing by the day. We're surviving. I wrote in a newsletter out to our friends recently that I think we're good at this. Things changing and us having to adapt and be different, that's part of technology. And so we're good at it. We know how to do this already. We're used to things changing. And that's what we're dealing with as a company and a city right now. And so I think we're weathering the storm okay. I think everybody's tired, but I think we're going to get our way. We're going to make our way through it and adapt as things go along. What about you guys?
I think it's more of the same. I was participating in an industry panel the other day, and we were talking a little bit about exactly that and just what we're seeing as far as the market changing. And the nice thing I think organizations like ours have is really the ability to adapt and mold and scale to support our clients and our end users associated with that. And so it's something we're certainly finding where we've gone from really an optional activity to something more in the essential services categories. You find businesses are classified just to help folks be able to do their day-to-day operational work, no matter what that is.
Yeah, I hear you. We have a challenge ahead of us as IT people and trying to support our customers and their businesses and getting them to work as normal as they can, despite the fact that it's not normal anymore. So that actually works really great with our segue here for why we want to talk about telephony and voice. So one of the things we've been experiencing are folks having a difficult time with their phone system after they've moved home, need to work from home and have their workforce kind of distributed. So this is a great technology for us to talk about and leverage. By way of introduction, Brian and I have been in a peer group together for almost 10 years now. So we've both known each other for a long time. We both saw each other when we had young companies, and now our companies have gotten to, they're almost teenagers now, these companies, and they've grown and done well. But this is something that your firm has done for a long time. You guys have used the Microsoft Voice platform in all of its flavors for a long time. So I guess start by telling us a little bit about how does Microsoft view voice over IP? What is it? And tell me whether or not this Office 365 voice, variant is what we all expect when we hear the word VoIP.
For sure. Well, if we take a step back for a second, it's certainly hard to believe it's been almost a decade at this point since we first got to know each other. But from a VoIP point of view, VoIP is really just stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. And really what it does is it allows the ability to make and receive phone calls be a lot more flexible, whereas before you had that physical phone, you would just plug it into a wall and you had a really limited set of things you could do. Really, all you could do is talk on it. And if we think about what your iPhone or Android device might do today, maybe the sort of things you need to do over the normal course of work on a day-to-day basis, it's everything from text message to video calling to document sharing to collaboration across the board. And a lot of those things that you might need to do when you work from home either increases that because those are things that previously you might do in person if you're in an office environment. Microsoft, while they've deployed voice calling within the 365 platform, and that's what we're here to talk about today, is something that they've been doing for a couple of years, but Microsoft working in the voice telephony space is something they have done for the past decade plus. And so we've had the opportunity to work with them on 4 to 5 previous iterations of that product, which used to be really dependent on a lot of servers, a lot of back office equipment. And as Office 365 became much more popular and people transitioned to the cloud, Microsoft rolled out the Teams platform and took the voice calling that they had in other tools, and they really just plussed it up and added additional features, but baked it right into the Teams display and ecostructure that you're used to on a day-to-day basis. So that's really what it is. That's really the positive part about it, and that's a lot of the flexibility you get as a result of that.
So, voice over IP, if you just go Google that, it's a pretty crowded space. You're going to get a lot of results. You're going to get like the Ring Centrals and the 8x8s and maybe you'll get Office 365 voice. I don't know, but there's a lot, Vonage, like there's a lot of different things out there. So is this the same as that, or is it uniquely different?
There's a core part that's the same, and I always like to think about setting up a voice system the same way I might be going and shopping for a vehicle. So, let's say, for example, I was going to go buy a new vehicle today, and I called you up and I said, hey, Doug, I'm looking at a vehicle to purchase, and I'm looking at a truck, right? Well, a truck sort of defines, say, a class of vehicles, but that truck could be something like, hey, I need a really big Suburban. I'm going to take the family going camping. Maybe I've got somewhere which is more ag basis, and I just need a really heavy pickup truck. Maybe I've actually got something which I'm looking to tow my boat with, or I just want, a small truck just tool around town. So while the term VoIP is the same as maybe a classification term in that case, really the advantage of it is not only do we have that base of VoIP functionality, which is the ability to make and receive calls, but we've got all of the other collaboration features with it, which is really what makes Office 365 as a tool set even more powerful across the board.
Mm-hmm. You forgot the Cybertruck.
The Cybertruck too. Well, we're already in the VoIP space, so that is true there.
So. There. So when you meet with your customers today, and you're kind of sitting down, maybe doing a QBR or talking to them about how their work from home is going, who's a good candidate for Office 365 voice? I mean, I know that like all technology doesn't fit every business. So who kind of goes through your mind as some of those businesses that would be really great fits for the 365 voice platform?
So what we really see is where 365 voice works the best is what we typically call an information worker. So somebody who's really at their computer for the vast majority of their day, and they're using the tools to collaborate. So that might be somebody who's more in a financial services role, and they're working through spreadsheets and documents and collaboration on that. Maybe they're in a sales aspect of what they're doing, so there's a lot more of the video calling aspect. Maybe they're in an operational or a management capacity, and so you're more in a Power BI dashboard or a collaboration portion there. In all those different environments, you're working at a computer. That's the vast majority of how you're going to process or do whatever you're doing for the organization you work for. And as part of that process, you want to just make sure that we've got the right tools. Now, the flip side of that might be who voice solution is not right for, which is sometimes an easier way to think of it than who is it good for. And where it's not right for, it's typically where there's not that one-to-one correlation between a person and a phone. So a great example of that might be in a restaurant environment. So you've got some phones there. VoIP's a great solution. You can do some amazing things with it in the restaurant environment, hospitality, et cetera. But it's really not an area where Teams is really going to be the best fit. A lot of those collaboration features, recording functionality, just aren't going to exist in that sort of operation. Retail is another one. Those sort of organizations, not a good fit. Whereas once again, something where we've got really that information worker idea is where it is a great fit.
So I heard a couple things that are kind of criteria. I heard one, if you're already pretty deep into the Microsoft ecosystem, if you're already, like you said, Power BI, you said 365, that's kind of one way, And I also heard like you almost could talk about it in the sense of if it's a person, a computer, and a phone, and they're all at the same desk together, that kind of puts them all in the same spot, versus in a restaurant, that's definitely not the case. So that kind of, those are the kind of things that go through my head. Bad candidates, like what else would be like a bad candidate? How would this work in maybe a really big call center environment or something like that?
So a call center is another great example where you once have got the person and the desk, so you sort of fit that criteria. But the flip side is some of the advanced call handling, call routing. In a call center environment, there's typically very specific things that happen. So typically when you call a call center, you'll hear your call may be recorded for quality control, monitoring, et cetera. Well, part of that reason is because in a call center environment, the person who's making calls, their manager may actually be eavesdropping in the various calls to listen from a quality control point of view, or to maybe do some training and coaching and help those people deliver better service. So those sort of things where you've got to bridge or mix multiple people into a calling environment, really that's not where Teams shines, and that's where it's not going to be a successful category. So once again, we're thinking that one-to-one sort of environment, but really in that sort of thing where that's the core purpose, and they're sort of a little more autonomous in what you're doing. You're doing work that's requiring you to provide input into those various tools, not typically more of a transactional process, which we might put a call center into.
Okay, like a pretty simple dial plan or a pretty simple
Correct.
plan whenever somebody calls in. Okay, good to know.
If we're talking about dial plans, then that's probably already a warning we might be Heading
we
a
know.
little off on the side
Yeah,
direction there. Yeah.
yeah. Good point. Good point. So do you already have to have a version of 365 in place to leverage the voice? Do I have to use their email? Like, let's pretend I'm using the Google Apps or the Google Business Suite. Do I have to quit that and to use this, or can I use it kind of as a standalone piece of the ecosystem?
You can use it as a standalone piece. I always like to think of it like going to the buffet, right? So you go to a buffet restaurant and there's a lot of different items on that buffet. And by the same token, when you purchase various Microsoft Office 365 licenses, there's different things that are available, and Microsoft puts them out there, makes them available, and you can choose to use or not use them. So for example, with most of Microsoft Office 365 licenses, they include a Teams license, or they include an email license. They may not include other things, but you certainly don't need to use those tools. So we have a lot of organizations where they've built parts of their business on G Suite. That is a great tool for they're looking to do, but they say, hey, Teams adds some benefit or value there. So we're going to use just the Teams as the item we're going to take off the buffet. We're going to skip everything else. That's totally fine. And we're going to move on down the road. The other nice thing is the Teams platform itself is something a lot of people have already become accustomed to for a couple of reasons. One, with the work from home situation that's been going on for the last couple of months, the Teams meeting and collaboration platforms popped up a bunch. So even if your organization doesn't use it, you may have been invited to participate in a Teams meeting from another organization. That's the first thing. The second thing is, starting in January of 2019, Microsoft started automatically shipping Office 365 with the Teams license included and with the Teams application included. So chances are it's sometime in the past 18, 17 months at this point, you may have had that license and that Teams app suddenly pop up on your computer. Nothing might be going on it, a lot might be going on it, but it's probably already there, and it's probably already part of what the underpinnings of your organization, whether or not you've chosen to turn on that functionality.
So I don't have, I can kind of pick and choose the things in the Microsoft world to use. Does it help me at all if they are integrated? Like, what benefit am I going to get if I'm already using Teams for chat and I'm using it a lot, and I'm using SharePoint, maybe OneDrive, all these things? Where am I going to see the benefit of also using Teams for my phone system, basically? Like, where do I see the benefit if I want to use everything together?
So there's a couple things you're going to see what you're going to get used to. Number one is the flow and the functionality within any Office 365 application. There's some commonality in the navigation, the organization, and the structure. So as you're having to learn something, it's not really learning something new as much as, oh, hey, I'm used to the same visual cues and menus and buttons. It might be a different application, but it looks similar. Most people, the ramp up process or the time to do that is a lot easier as far as that goes. The next thing that pops up is the Teams architecture itself. So one of the really cool things Microsoft's done with the Teams platform is it's the same no matter what type of device you consume it on. So if you're using it on your iPhone, I'm using it on my Android, one of my colleagues might be using it on a web version, and somebody else in your office is using it on their desktop. All four of those people have the exact same user experience and user interface. When Teams deploys an update, the great news is anybody on any of those different platforms gets the same update at the same point in time. So across the board, no matter what type of device either your organization might require to use or you might personally choose to use, it still works the same and it's the same great experience. So that's the second part that's nice. The third thing is everything that you've already put into Office 365 becomes available and floats up as part of the Teams ecosystem. Easiest thing to think about is, hey, once I've got Teams added, and you can do this even without the calling feature, you'll see a Meet Now via Teams button in Outlook. So you can automatically send a Teams meeting invite natively from Microsoft Outlook. You have your contacts in Microsoft Outlook. Those immediately show up in Microsoft Teams. That's another great example. You want to share or collaborate information, it's super easy to launch or connect those things from any app in the Microsoft ecosystem. And then, of course, one of the great things that we're seeing now is the machine learning or AI capabilities of the Azure Cloud and Cortana, which is Microsoft's digital assistant. And what we're seeing with those things is you're seeing it start to pull those pieces of information. So I can set Cortana to be remembering or learning certain things in Teams. I might message you and say, hey, I'll have this document to you on Thursday. Cortana then knows Thursday morning to remind me about that document and say, hey, on your hit list, is this something that you want to follow up on? You owed Doug this particular document. So it's really taking that information and making it so that the value of what I'm trying to do is not necessarily in the logistics and the scheduling portion as much as the content delivery and what our value add is.
Wow, so you're going to get some pretty big benefits from having all of these things working together, right?
You
And
certainly will.
that's pretty unique in the industry right now, because for a long, long time, the phone system and the network were kind of separate entities, and never they talked to each other. But now we maybe have this opportunity to have them more integrated. So, we both of us have been in IT for a long time. We've been friends with Microsoft for a long time, but let's be honest, like sometimes they do stuff that doesn't work. How can I trust Microsoft with my voice? Like, this is a pretty integral part of my business. Can I trust them to be my phone system and to use their cloud and use their Teams app and all that to be my phone system? Maybe I'm one of those people I really like that the phone system's, bolted to the wall in a closet in my office, but can I trust Microsoft to really handle this part of my business?
Yeah, well, like the question you're asking there is really the question that we've had as a dialogue with most of our clients, maybe 5 to 7 years ago, except at that point we were talking about email. And it used to be that the go-to, if you will, when either you or I sort of got into this industry, was that we would sell everybody a server, and one of the components or things that server would do would be to handle all of the email. Now, at this point, if I showed up today to some client, I was like, great news, I've got a server I'm going to sell you so we can put it in the back room, we can have this box. And the box is going to store all the email and all your valuable email communication. But if like the power goes down here or the internet goes down or the building burns up in flames or whatever else, suddenly your email is going to stop. Well, nobody in their right mind would go ahead and choose that option, because unless you've got a very, very specific set of requirements where that makes sense, you're going to view that the time that Microsoft puts into building and hardening the Office 365 ecosystem, if that's from the software point of view, if that's from their redundant data centers around the globe, which have redundant power, redundant internet connections, security, both physical, electronic, et cetera, and all of the tools that they can put in there, it would be cost prohibitive for us to apply that to the same set of circumstances for somebody on-prem. Well, all Microsoft's done is said, hey, taken everything we already learned, everything we already put in place, the great foundation we built related to Office 365 for email, for documents, for CRM, for all these other tools, well, let's just put voice in that same pile. So they've done a lot of things to make that secure. But in addition, if we think about it, currently a lot of people have their voice service or signal come through a third-party company or carrier. So there's a lot of large companies around the US. If we think of companies like CenturyLink, Level 3, Windstream, Verizon, Comcast, which all service voice concepts to all sorts of people. And in a lot of cases, we can take that same voice connection, and instead of directing that voice signal to our office where we had that PBX on the wall, we can also go ahead and effectively just change it and instead plug it into the Azure cloud and have it delivered that voice signal directly to Microsoft. So in those cases, let's say you either had a contractual relationship with your current service provider, so you couldn't change it for that reason, or you were like, hey, we want Microsoft to do the Teams calling because that's great, but I really still want to have the dial tone separately for somewhere else. Microsoft can still meet you halfway and do that hybrid type of situation to meet the best of both worlds.
So what do you call that dial tone service? Is that the call plan? Like, is that the Microsoft calling plan or something like that?
Yeah, so the calling plan is the dial tone. That's the ability to actually make and receive calls, right? So we can have that call connectivity part of it. And then there's also effectively a bring your own dial plan solution, which is where you can go ahead and connect in that third-party provider, whoever existingly provides your numbers, and make sure those work. Quite frankly, we see great stuff with Microsoft and their responsiveness with their team when you port or use the numbers directly on the Microsoft platform. But the great news is that they've sort of got this gradient solution to meet at whatever plan works best for everybody.
Sure, right. I might be in a contract. I might not be able to change my dial tone service, but I might want to upgrade my phone system in some way.
Exactly.
So Brian, tell me a little bit, I'm one of those people, I still like having a phone on my desk. I have a little bit of comfort. I like picking up the handset. I like touching the buttons and dialing from the phone on my desk. I understand, Teams is only on my computer. Are there hardware phones? Are there phones that people have to choose from that might sit on their desk and still work with Teams? How available is that? Is it something special for Microsoft?
For sure. So there's a couple important parts to that question, that statement. Number one thing is that Microsoft does make phones, physical phones. I've got one sitting on my desk here, for instance, which run a specialized version of that same Teams app that we talked about before. So the same way it's the same Teams app on iOS or on Android or on a desktop or on a web version. It's also the same on the official Teams hardware phone devices. And the cool thing is there's a lot of phones coming out in different form factors. There's a phone which might look like a regular desktop phone. There's phones which have little cameras built in. The neat thing we're starting to see now is more devices that are designed for 3 to 6 person conferences, which might have some of that functionality built in, but have almost a little separate monitor. So you can have your conversation, be doing what you're doing. You've got the separate device that facilitates the communication. However you think about it, there's really a huge advantage to having the Teams app living on your computer or phone or tablet and using a Bluetooth headset similar to the one that I'm using here today. And if we think about it, when we started doing work from home and people had to work from home, you pick up your laptop, you take it, you go home, you find a place that has good wireless, you're good to go. Now you've got somebody who wants to take your existing VoIP phone and you want to take it home. Well, first of all, I've got this phone and most VoIP phones aren't wireless. So I got to find a way to have a cable. Secondarily, most VoIP phones don't necessarily use a regular outlet, but they get power from the type of network connection or network device called a PoE switch on your network. That's a very commonplace type piece of equipment for an office network. It almost never occurs on a home network. Mm-hmm. So now, even if I've got that equipment, I've got to run this giant cable, maybe like up the stairs and around the corner from where my office is to where I've got the modem plugged in, and it just turns into a total cluster. So the way easier thing that we find is having that app built into the computer and either using the microphone speakers built in the computer, super easy. Using a headset, you get a little more audio clarity depending on what your requirements are. That gives you the maximum flexibility. And that's one of the cool reasons as we had people transition to a work from home environment. A lot of our clients were like, hey, it's just another day at the office, because they were already using a solution like this. If there was, a day due to snow, or maybe they had a sick kid at home and they had to take care of, or they were just working a little bit and then, taking off on vacation, or who knows what's going on. So by having those tools available, you provide the maximum flexibility for your team and where they can be working.
Right. So by not having the physical phone, I get a little more mobility. But if I want a phone at my desk at the office, should we get to go
totally
back
doable.
to our offices?
Yeah.
Completely doable.
If that's a thing, yes.
If that's a thing, again, I think it will be. We'll see.
Pretty sure I'd put money on that one. Yeah.
Right. Well, you're in your office right now, so.
True. Fair enough. Yeah. Exactly. So.
Great. Well, Brian, thanks for talking to us today about Teams Voice. This has been great. This is a new feature from Microsoft, and I think the more and more we adopt these sort of, like you talked about the buffet, the Microsoft buffet, as we adopt more of their things and we can leverage the integration, I think that's a big win for our customers, and in this case, a big win for their mobility when it comes time to work from home and be more mobile. So thanks for being with us today.
Okay. Thank you so much. Enjoyed the conversation. Take care.
Thanks.